I'm really rich. I'll show you that in a second.
I speak to a lot of people. My primary consultant is myself.
The greatest jobs president that God ever created. They spent, listen to this, $1 million on ads against me in Iowa. Now here's the good news. They used the best pictures. I look so good in those pictures, I'm trying to find where they got them. I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters. I will build a wall and Mexico's going to pay for it and they'll be happy to pay for it. And all these other characters say, oh, they won't pay, because they don't know the first thing about how to negotiate. Trust me, Mexico will pay for it. Because I was down there, and I watched our police and our firemen down at 7-Eleven, down to the World Trade Center right after it came down. What a great honor it must be for you to honor me tonight. It's a little treat. You're going to see the nicest apartment in New York City. It's my apartment. The beauty of me is that I'm very rich. You say, oh, they won't pay.
So this video is a message to America, and I'm not a Trump supporter, I'm not a Hillary supporter, I'm a British citizen, so I couldn't take part in the American elections anyway, but America is a huge influence in my own nation, especially with our Parliament, who seems to be like America's little lapdog and will do everything that America asks. And there is an interrelationship between American and British politicians, and they do both follow and lead each other alternately. And I understand why people voted for Trump, because Hillary Clinton, the psychopath, was an even more dangerous character in many ways. So people believed at the time, because of her threats of war with Russia and things like this. And instead, you know, they went for the used car salesman. But people did really, I think the majority would have voted for Bernie Sanders. To what extent Bernie Sanders could have achieved anything within the current corporate economic climate that's presently taking over the world, climate of austerity, where corporations can get money, corporations like Israeli based G4S, a global security firm, can come to Britain and get £200,000 a year per child off the British government for every child they take into care, into one of their children's homes that they are setting up all over Britain. And as Chris Hedges said in a debate that I watched about Trump and Clinton during the elections, he explained that in America now corporations can get £40,000 a year for every prisoner they house in their corporate prisons. So every criminal is now worth £40,000 a year to a corporation. Okay, now imagine if those criminals were working in a job and getting £40,000 a year instead. Then they wouldn't have had to turn to crime, would they? They wouldn't have been enticed into crime. They wouldn't have been so desperate to commit a crime. Maybe they wouldn't have become mentally ill enough to commit a crime, because they could actually sustain themselves and live with dignity. But no, they're worth £40,000 to a corporation as a criminal. So what does that mean? It means that you've developed a society where it's profitable for rich people to invest in prisons in order to get £40,000 a year off the government. Now I've always heard a lot of people talking against welfare and things like this. And so what are these prisons operating on then? They're operating on welfare. They're getting welfare. Except they don't just get a paltry couple of $1,000 a year on welfare. No, they get $40,000 a year per person they imprison. So if they've got a prison, say with 200 inmates in it, how much is that a year? How much do they spend on staff, on food? And then there's cutbacks on the staff, and then the staff get pressured, and then there's problems. And the problem is that America is now governed by a malignant narcissist. He is a malignant narcissist. Now, I played that thing at the beginning just to remind Americans of all the lies that this man told. You know, he couldn't even remember the date of one of the most terrible events the most terrible event that's happened in recent American history. If not in all of American history. Okay, he said 7/11. And that is obviously because he's getting mixed up with Britain's 7/7, which was a smaller version of America's 9/11. And we do have very strong reasons to suspect that 7/7 was an inside job too, and probably with Israeli intelligence hand in it as well. Seems though Netanyahu was given a 6-minute warning. Now, this is the article. I'll just scroll down, but I will leave you the link. I mean, this guy, what can you say about him? I'm just lost for words to describe this person he is like the front man, you know, the doorman at the front of the door, you know, to these big hotels. What can you say about him? He's got a difficult job anyway, but I can say that. You know, and we know that Trump is a misogynist, and it is true, misogynists are more likely to be mentally ill. Of course they are. If they've got to, in order to boost their ego, hate women, you know, their counterpart in the species, there's something wrong with them. And that is what is wrong with the whole of our society and the whole of the global society, is the inherent misogyny of it, the inherent ignorance of women and children's needs and rights. And the reason why this type of misogynistic beliefs causes mental illness in men is because they are being persuaded to conform to a construct of masculinity that is not natural. It's come from the Roman Empire. It just isn't natural for men to be this cold-hearted, hard, unfeeling entity. And yet a lot of men are so convinced that they have to be like this because they get bullied or whatever, they feel inferior. But they're made to feel inferior in order that they can more easily become misogynists. And because women are physically weaker and also economically weaker, you see, and that is what helps to keep that status quo, is by having a lot of misogynists about who feel threatened by female power and a female presence. The only females they are prepared to tolerate are ones that are totally subservient to them and who will put up with all their insane demands and unreasonable expectations that women are supposed to satisfy. So, you know, I do feel that this is the foundation of problems in America and most of the world. Now, the thing is that America has a constitution, we the people. It does not say we the men. We the people. And in the programme I watched with Chris Hedges and another couple of his speeches, I remember, I think it was one of his speeches, a lady got up in the audience at the end and asked the question, well, what can we do? And Chris Hedges said, you know, rightly said, yeah, well, we need to get active and, you know, develop grassroots. It's got to come from the grassroots. But really what American people can do is stand by their constitution. That's what Americans are lawfully, have a lawful duty to do, is always uphold the constitution, because that's sacred, that's sacred, you know. And again, the loss of the sacred, a relinquishing of what is sacred in human society. And the Constitution is a sacred article, okay? It's a sacred doctrine. Yes, it can be amended, it can be updated, but the fundamental, lawfully, in order for the Constitution to be altered in any way, the alterations must never fundamentally disrespect or diminish the power and the intent, the original motive and intent of the Constitution. And we know that the original motive and intent of the Constitution is always to put the power in the people's hands as a democracy, and to give every citizen equal, fair rights, equal rights under the law. Okay. And where America was let down was on 9/11. you see, because this is treason. And this is absolute, this is just one piece of evidence, but this is evidence of how deep that treason goes and how closely connected this criminal cabal are, especially in cahoots with the mainstream media. And to the extent now that you could say that the mainstream media are actually complicit, and we really need to see them as terrorists. The BBC are now lawfully suspected as a terrorist organisation. Because here they are on 9/11 live apparently, and they're saying, and this lady's saying, the 47-storey Salomon Brothers building, that's building 7, to the World Trade Center has also collapsed. And there it is in the background. It's not collapsed. It's not even started to collapse yet. This was about 20 minutes before the building actually came down. Now, I've written to the BBC about this, as probably countless others. One man did successfully take the BBC to court. This evidence has been accepted in a court, okay, because he refused to pay his TV licence to a terrorist organisation. Now, how did the BBC know in advance, 20 minutes advance, that this building was going to collapse? Because apparently it collapsed through office fires. Now, the thing is, never in all of history has there been a multi-storey steel frame building, as the World Trade Center 7 was, ever completely collapsed in demolition style, freefall into its own footprint due to a few office fires. So it isn't like they could have just been expecting it to collapse. It wasn't hit by a plane. It isn't that they were expecting it to collapse, but they were reporting that because the whole event of 9/11 was organised by powers within the United States. And it was a collusion between Saudi, possibly patsies, Israeli intelligence, Americans with dual Israeli citizenship, members of the military, members of the Pentagon, members of Congress, well, the Senate, and obviously the government itself, because we had the other, you know, America at that time had another malignant narcissist, and that was George Bush Jr., a malignant narcissist, an absolute fool. He wasn't as brash and brawly, quite as brash and brawly as Donald Trump, but he was a narcissist. And you see this, these are the squibs, aren't they? Because there's no way that this building could have fallen down. There is absolutely no way that it would have fell the way they would have collapsed the way they did, and just turned to dust. Everything just turned to dust. Not even any bodies to be found. These are the straight cuts. You know, where is the building? Where did the buildings go? Because they did mostly vanish into dust that we found out is toxic dust, and a very, very large amount of people in New York, and especially the first responders, are suffering severe respiratory illnesses. Did they get billions in compensation? Did Larry Silverstein, who owned these twin towers and got billions from insurance payments out of this, did he give any of those billions to the first responders? Has he offered to pay any of for their health care that his buildings cause, being full of asbestos? And they lied to people, said the dust was perfectly safe when it wasn't. We know that it was full of asbestos. There we go. This is your molten metal coming out. There is absolutely no way that molten metal would have been pouring out of a building because a plane had hit it. Okay. Think about your cooker. What's it made of? Your oven, what's it made of? How hot does it get? I had a Rayburn. It was cast iron. That used to reach very high temperatures because it ran the whole heating system in the house, as well as an oven and to cook food on. And that reached very, very high temperatures. Perhaps even hotter than the temperatures caused by the office fires, but at least as hot. Okay? According to the official story of 9/11, my Rayburn should have just completely melted. The whole thing should have just completely collapsed and melted because it was so hot. But it didn't, you see, because you need to reach super, super, super high temperatures to melt steel. Thermite, nanothermite. And you see, okay, America was in shock at first, and everybody bought the official lie, okay, the official conspiracy theory, and they did their 9/11 report at insistence of the families who also rightfully were questioning the whole event as to what really happened. And it wasn't long before people started to notice the evidence and start asking serious questions. There you go, squibs. Asking serious questions about how, there you go, look, this classic demolition, how this could have happened, because if the buildings were pre-wired, which obviously they were, so there's no two ways about it, obviously they were pre-wired, then this wasn't done by Muslim terrorists, was it? This was an organised event, and it was an event that was orchestrated in order to save the criminal bankers who were about to completely collapse, and they would have all been facing criminal charges, okay, because housed in this building here, the CIA officers had all the information on unlawful and fraudulent and criminal transactions between Wall Street and the Twin Towers. And the Twin Towers themselves held all the information, incriminating computers, you name it. They wouldn't have been able to shred that stuff in 10 years. They'd have had to remove the hard drives of every single computer in order to save their skins. They couldn't do it. And so what they did was they demolished the evidence. They destroyed the evidence. Okay. Don't you think it was a bit strange that the Pentagon got hit in the accounts department, where staff were busy that day investigating the matter of a missing 2-point-something trillion that had gone missing, announced the day before. And most of those staff were instantly killed. And all the information and evidence related to that missing 2.3 trillion, I think it was at the time, vanished as well. So, oh, we'll just have to write that one off, won't we? Don't you think it was strange that the American military were engaged in exercises on that day? Military exercises dealing with hijacked planes. So the military was unable to respond because they were confused. There's the whole of the Pentagon. Nanothermite. The dust has been analysed. It contained nanothermite. Okay? The evidence was all shipped to China. A lot of it. But we still have some evidence, and we have all the photographic evidence as well. Okay. So, now, when America understands, as soon as America understood, and then they were being offered to vote suddenly for the first black president, at a time when really what they should have been doing is standing up for their constitution. Okay? You should have been standing up for your constitution, America. But no, instead, you took part in a general election, a presidential election, that was organised by tyrants, a tyrannical ruling power of media, finance and government that controls your army and police. Okay? You took part in a general election organised by the criminals who did this. And that was your first error. And that was your biggest mistake, America. Because what were you saying about the people that asked questions? Wacky online theories claim to have new proof that the Twin Towers were brought down by an explosion rather than a terrorist attack. And this is the continual stance of the mainstream media. Okay, this is from The Sun, who are, let's face it, one of the most evil newspapers, if you could even call them a newspaper. It's basically porn. That's what they are, pornography. And, you know, the wacky conspiracy theories are actually the people who support the official conspiracy theory, because that's what it is, a conspiracy theory. It is not a conspiracy fact, it's a theory, and actually an absolute pack of lies. Okay? When you understand that this is an absolute pack of lies brought to you by the criminal bankers and their cohorts, because let's face it, money rules this world, their money. They are happy to pay £40,000 a year to house a human being in a prison to earn profits for a corporation, but they're not happy to pay even $25,000 a year to give that person a job and some dignity. And the same goes in Britain. They're very happy to give G4S, our government is very happy to give G4S £200,000 a year to look after a child in care that apparently needs to be in care. Though a lot of the motives for taking these children into care are extremely dubious. And since there has been such fantastical sums of money offered per child to privatised childcare providers, the amount of children that are being taken off parents in Britain is happening at an alarming rate of up to 2,000 children a month, and a huge percentage of those are taken from actually genuinely good homes, really, because no home is absolutely perfect these days in this world, very rare, on the grounds of a future emotional risk. A future emotional risk. They are taking children. They took my friend's 6 children on the grounds of a future emotional risk because she was going through a difficult divorce with a husband who actually was found guilty of abusing his children and behaving maliciously towards his ex-partner. But when it comes to money and big corporations, the media will turn a blind eye. So the media now, your media, every media that has not focused on this, on the evidence from experts and professionals, just as now the media is focusing on Trump's narcissism, because he does make it difficult for them to have any credibility. A publication like The Independent cannot support somebody as openly crazy as this guy, because they would lose all credibility if they did. They might be able to say something good about George Bush, because at least he gave the facade that gave them a sense of credibility. There was a sense of credibility there. He doesn't give them any credibility. He basically is saying, yeah, so you're going to support me now the way that you've supported the lies about 9/11. Now you're going to support me. And they don't like it. It was easy for them to support the lies of 9/11, the official conspiracy theory, because a lot of credible people were presenting it, you see. But Trump's not quite so credible, is he, for them? And so what America really should have done is to stand by their constitution. As soon as you started to realise the truth, the facts, America needed to stand by its constitution. No, sorry, we are not going to take part in an election that's been organised by tyrants who did 9/11 and have actually covered it up and have actually employed a media. Now we know the media is totally in the tyrant's pocket as well. So we don't trust the media that will be, delivering the debates and the politics of the contestants in the general election. We do not want that. We now wish to remove from power the tyrants who did 9/11. We want a full public inquiry, open inquiry, and it will have to be organised by people who have been chosen by we the people, because we do not trust the establishment to investigate itself. That is why Americans have a right to bear arms. Now, it's noticeable that a lot of the people who voted for Trump are the kind of people who do value their right to bear arms. And one of the reasons why you are allowed to bear arms is so that you can, American citizens, overthrow a tyrannical government. And a tyrannical government is the kind of government that does things like this, and then blames it on Muslims, and then robs American citizens of even more money to go and bomb other countries and kill American soldiers, as well as countless innocent men, women and children in American citizens' names, and cause the world to hate America, and also to fund and train ISIS, which we do know that ISIS is employed and is a creation of the money men who have poured their funding into supplying weapons to these people. Because how does ISIS get its weapons? And now we've just witnessed Donald Trump bombing Syria, because bombing Assad, okay, really, against Assad, supporting ISIS, after ISIS has used chemical weapons on Syrian people. It's ISIS that used them, not President Assad. I'm not saying I'm a huge fan of President Assad, but at the end of the day, he's a far better choice than a set of ISIS terrorists who do use chemical weapons on people, and who actually make them in Iraq. Go and check Mosul, Iraq. They are making chemical weapons in Iraq. ISIS. That is what your government has paid for. That is what you have paid for, American citizens. That is what you are now in debt paying for, was demolishing Iraq, killing over 1 million people there, in order for ISIS to take control, and now manufacture chemical weapons, which they are using in Iraq, and which they are also using now in Syria. And so that is why, America, you are doomed. Seriously doomed. You Trump supporters, you got carried away on Trump's lies, his rhetoric. He just stood there and lied through his teeth and had a good laugh while he was doing it. And everybody behind the scenes, the people who want to exploit, profit from and control you and even kill you, were all giving him a big pat on the back and having a good laugh at his audacity and how he was able to carry it off. And America, you have fallen. You have fallen. When those Twin Towers fell, and as soon as it became clear that this was a demolition job, look at that, it's tipping over. Why didn't the whole thing just drop then? Because it should have done, because these towers are built in sections. Look, can you see the sections? There is no way that it could have fell free fall without thermite. Can you see the section there? The top bit, you can see that the whole section is about to fall. That's where the collapse should have stopped. How did the top bit turn to dust that was underneath, that was on top of the fire where the plane had hit? How is that possible for that to collapse into dust? Explain that. Explain how it's possible for this top part to turn into dust, not to just topple over. And these questions are driving people like myself crazy. We're just sick of it. Okay? It fills us with disgust to witness people buying it, buying the story, just for the sake of what? Another day in hell? Now, unless America does get on its feet and stand up for its constitution, America, you are fucked. Okay? Because you haven't got a constitution. And we all know that because you did not stand up for your constitution, the people, the tyrants, immediately gave themselves powers to deny your constitution. And as soon as they did that, that should have been the red flag, and immediately pick up your arms and stand against the government. But you didn't. So why have you got arms then, American citizens, Trump supporters? Why do you value your arms so much if you are not allowed to use them against tyrants who killed your own people, killed American citizens? What they did was abominable. And when you know that it was your own members of your own government, members of your own banking institutions, and straight after that, suddenly they had this huge bailout. Instead of going to jail for their crimes, they all end up receiving trillions in bailouts. And American citizens end up living in their cars. Oh, but it was only to a few low-wage workers anyway. They shouldn't have been given a mortgage, people were saying. And they tried to blame the whole collapse on a few American impoverished homeowners. Sorry. Go away, wake up. These people were just blatantly squandering money. They were robbing pension funds. They were setting up fake businesses and giving them fake AAA ratings. Gordon Bowden of England, he's got all the goods on these people. We know what they were doing, and that is why they did 9/11, and that is why you are still suffering, America, under their Ponzi banking scheme. And they will now, don't think they will ever relent. They will stamp their boot on you. And they've employed Donald Trump, a malignant narcissist, to do their job for them. And you were sold, you were duped, because you've been raised to be duped. You were being programmed to be duped by somebody like him. And or Hillary Clinton, the psychopath. Was that a choice? That kind of choice is what you get when you're being ruled by the kind of tyrants who will do 9/11. They'll give you a choice between a socio-psychopath or a malignant narcissist. Is that a choice? Two severely mentally imbalanced, mentally ill people. Is that a choice? The only sane person that was even a contender in the whole race, Bernie Sanders, was denied. The people's choice, we the people, was denied a chance to stand. He had to step down and let Hillary Clinton, socio-psychopath, covert narcissist, to take the stand. But the truth is that 9/11 was an inside job. Okay. Squips.
There was a third explosion, however, that brought the tower to collapse.
There were reports of an explosion before the tower fell. We understand now there has been a secondary.
That's the kind of horror that these people did. Knowing that there was people inside the towers. Killing witnesses. Okay, they killed witnesses within the towers. We know it was an inside job. It's not a wacky conspiracy theory, okay, to claim that the collapses on 9/11 were controlled demolition. And because they were controlled demolition, we are aware that the whole thing was an organised, controlled terrorist attack. So, you know, I'll leave it with you. I'll leave you the links. And as I say to America, you need to stand by your constitution. For those of you who believe in God and Jesus, then I suggest you look at some of my other videos, my supernatural disclosure video, and understand that I am talking to you from an understanding of God, Jah, universal intelligence and universal law. And it is time you connected with that, because that universal intelligence is the kind of intelligence that was operating in those minds who wrote your constitution. People who had a firm belief in God, okay, who trusted in God. But unfortunately, America, in gold we trust. And so you need to understand that, you know, gold is not God. And that is why Mr. Trump, who you all thought was gold and he loves gold, that does not make him a god. Okay? Obviously, the guy needs help. And that's what he should have received instead of being made president. And if he hadn't have been made president, he probably would right now be bankrupt. So please think about what you've done. And you will have to pick up your arms and stand up for your rights and remove the tyrants from power. That is the only thing that you can do. Anything less than that will not bring back your constitution, will not restore your dignity. And the world, well, we've got no respect. There's no respect because you've disrespected the American flag by ignoring the truth and facts of 9/11. And the media, you are all complicit. The media, American media, you have one chance now, okay, to speak out and start asking questions. This is your last chance, American media and intelligentsias like you, Chomsky, who've ignored the facts and evidence, you have this one chance to speak out now and support the people, support the truth. If you carry on, choose to live the lie, know you have condemned millions of people to a living hell under rule of the boots of the tyrants, the evil terrorists that did this. You have condemned your nation to be governed by those terrorists who will rob the people until nobody has anything at all. And so they are complicit. You will be held complicit. You are guilty. You are a terrorist. Every member of the media who refuses to support the facts, you are a terrorist. You are complicit in an act of terrorism, because you are clinging on and promoting absolute bare-faced lies. And when a system has become so lawless that its whole establishment and media and intelligentsia, people like Chomsky, can even deny the laws of physics, that country is dead and it has no constitution. So I'm very sorry that it is bad news, but in a way it's good news, Mary, because remember, God is with you. God is with the people who are righteously stand up for the truth. And I can tell you, I can assure you, God is real. Universal intelligence that created you is a reality, and it will stand by you. You will have support from that. Just get with it. And, you know, so you made a mistake. You've not got voted for Trump, or, you know, you got duped. That's why those people are successful in the first place. They dupe people because good people do not understand what a malignant narcissist is. They just believed him because they believed that people tell the truth. It's not your fault for believing in Trump, but it is your fault now. Now you know the truth, not to stand by your constitution. That is the only vote. Your vote must always be for the constitution, because every president that comes into power needs to uphold the constitution. So your vote always has to be for the constitution. And when the president is not supporting the constitution, it's a tyrannical power that has done these terrible acts and committed terrible war crimes on the strength of them, and robbed the American people on the strength of them. No, you don't have an election. You pick up your arms. That's why you have them. So thank you for listening, and love and strength.